Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are tuning in from. Welcome to The Connect. We're coming at you live from Mbap City, the cap city of the Kingdom of Eswatini. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We understand you could have been anywhere in the World Wide Web, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that very much. My name is Tamsanga Sibanze, a.k.a. the courtesy of hip-hop, a.k.a. the Black Superman, a.k.a. Oh, man. Thank you very much for also just adjusting with us this evening, because we have done a slight time switch. We're normally coming at you live at 9 in the morning, but today we switched it up and we're coming at you right now. I think this allows for a wider audience. A number of people have mentioned that the morning time was a little bit of a challenge because of work and other commitments. But then also it does give us audience with the rest of the world. So when you tune in, please let us know where in the world you're tuning in from, just so that we get an idea. We are inviting everybody to please join us in this here discussion. Throw your comments, questions, queries on the comment section below, and we will try to go through as many of them as we possibly can. So we will go straight to it, because we've got a lot to discuss here this evening. And like I said, we are inviting you to vibe with us. Gender-based violence is the topic that we're discussing here today, which is considered the most prevalent human rights violation globally. Here in the Kingdom of Eswatini, according to the Swaziland Action Group Against Abuse, also known as SWAGA, 1 in 3 girls in Eswatini is subject to a gender-based violence in the form of rape before the age of 18. Almost 48% of women report some sort of sexual violence being inflicted upon them, and intimate partners, that is husbands and boyfriends, are the most likely perpetrators of this sexual violence against women. The country also experiences a relatively high rate of child marriages, with 5% of girls being married before the age of 18. A report for All Africa stated that after the passing of the Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Act, also known as SODOV Act, of 2018, a total of 2,068 cases of domestic violence were reported from August 2018 to March 2019. And in a country with 1.2 million people, that's extremely high. The realities here for women are often stark, particularly in rural communities. Here with me, or here with us this evening, we've got a panel that's going to be taking us through the different faces and the different ideas, the different concepts, and the different do's and don'ts, the different things that we need to be aware of around gender-based violence. Shelley?
Hello everybody, and welcome to The Connect. Thank you for joining us this evening. You are obviously connected to us via Facebook. We are live also on YouTube, and live streaming obviously to Instagram. So please share, invite your friends to the panel this evening so we can have this very hard but necessary discussion. We are never alone, as you know. We always have friends, family, experts to join us when we talk about all these important things, and this evening is not any different. So I'd like to start on the far end if we can, and introduce you to the lovely lady, Slindele Nkosi. She is obviously very well known in our local context. For those of you who are meeting her for the first time, here's a little bit of who Slindele is. I think you should do this, but I will, please. So Slindele has been very much involved with the organization that Curtis mentioned, which is Swaziland Action Group Against Abuse, also known as SWAGA, and was very involved in mobilizing resources for the organization, facilitating local corporate involvement in the SWAGA initiatives, and very pivotally strengthening national advocacy of the Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Bill, which was successfully enacted as an act in June 2018. So very important milestone, and Slindele being part of that is something I'm sure you'll share with us, and we're going to ask a little bit more. Apart from that, and this was what really interests me, is you write speeches. I didn't know that about you.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I've been very involved in preparing and writing event speeches for different authorities, which include DPM's office, Deputy Prime Minister's office, of course. Always around also Women's Day, 16 Days Activism, International Human Rights Day, Day of the African Child, and Day of the Girl Child. And this obviously between the years 2016 and 2019. obviously compiled a number of reports. When you're in the NGO world, that's almost a default. Yeah, you do it. And also you've been involved in many local... Today you're on our couch, well, on our red chairs. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this, yes. You also run a consultancy firm called Yamanzi Psychology Services and have been practicing in private practice for over 13 years already. You also have assisted major companies in Eswatini and abroad on professional psychological and emotional support services. And your occupational history ranges from the UNDP in Pretoria, HIV counseling, West Koppies Psychiatric Institution, intern psychologist, Baylor College of Medicine, which we know also here is a landmark within our Eswatini nation, and the South African Military Health Services, but to name a few. Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of our panel this evening.
Thank you so much.
And of course, ladies and gents, I'm your co-host, Shelly B. Okay. So we have people entering in the room. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got Julie Thring, we've got Dudu. Thank you for joining us from Gaborone. Yael from Mbabane, Sue from the lovely Valley of Heaven, Ezulwini. And we've got Olga who comes to us from South Africa. Thank you. Please share that you are online with us so that many of you can join. We need to have this very important conversation this evening. Join us. So please share, please call your friends, ping them and tell them to come online this evening and join us for the conversation. Okay, so as people start to join, we will obviously invite everybody who is joining us to share your own thoughts, your own questions as we work through the topic. But perhaps to kickstart, ladies, when we say GBV, we obviously understand it means gender-based violence. But often what we go to is just women violence or domestic violence on women. Is that the definition of gender-based violence, or are we somehow missing a whole part of the story? Maybe if I can start with you, Ndo.
Perfectly, absolutely. When we talk about GBV, especially with men, it's almost like, oh, the woman's thing. And it's such a huge misconception. And with Tamsanga's intro, with the SODV Act, again, it looked like it was attacking men. It was coming out to slash men, and unfortunately, that's not what it's like. It's for both genders. That's why it's gender, male, female. For your own info, men too are heavily sexually, financially, emotionally, psychologically, and any other way abused as well.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that out. I think that's an important one. Why is it so often, though, we tend to think women? Is it because women are most victims? Is it because the stats tend to lean towards women? Selena?
Well, definitely, women are predominantly the victims of gender-based violence. I think the SODV Act was really important because it actually recognized that not just women are raped. It was the first legislation in Swaziland that did that, and said that we actually have male rape, which I think is a really important thing to talk about. I think that it is very stigmatized for men to discuss issues when they might have been sexually assaulted. There's obviously a lot of social pressure. And because when we're talking about gender-based violence, a lot of the time we're talking about toxic masculinity. And toxic masculinity is something that's really, really hard to address. And if you are a male victim of gender-based violence, toxic masculinity means you're much less likely to talk about it. And so while I think it's very important that we do talk about all the genders and how they suffer from gender-based violence, the fact of the matter is it is predominantly women. And that reason is because women are disenfranchised in so many ways.
Absolutely. Slindele, you obviously have been at the heart, you know, within an organization that's been at the heart of facing these issues. We understand now just from the definitions that we're talking men, we're talking women, and also of all ages. So it's not only elderly, it's not adult, but it's also children. Tell us a little bit about how is it that we need to also remember that children are, when we say GBV, we also talk about children.
Yeah, we live in a country where we don't, as adults, we don't discuss issues with children, but it's happening, it's out there, they see it. We need to involve them, we need to sit them down, tell them this is what is happening, so that when they grow up, they realize the effects, the importance of talking about issues as a whole, not just GBV, not just abuse, but let us talk about what is happening here at home. Let us not sweep it under the carpet. That's where everything starts. Go to the room, we want to speak as adults, but we're speaking about you, we're speaking about things that involve you. So come, let us embrace the nature or the culture of discussing things with our children, because it affects them. And that's the only way that perpetrators get away with this, because they tell them things they're not aware of, things they don't know. So if you bring a child closer to you and tell her or him, this is a bad touch, this is what, then she will know, then he will know when someone comes. I'm doing this because I love you better. That's how they tell them. I'm going to show you how to love someone. I'm going to love you better than your mother. So let's keep this between us. So if it's a conversation that you have with your children every day, they know, oh, what Malume is saying is not true. What Auntie is saying is not true. It's not Malume's only. Aunties, gangas as well. They abuse children. So let us involve the children in everything that we do and say.
That's so interesting, and I think it's coming to also some of the stats, which are really shocking. I want you to just share that with us again, courtesy, because for those who have just come in, I think it's just to be aware of what really we are talking to. Sure. If you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit of those stats that you mentioned in your intro.
All right. So we've got 1 in 3 girls in Eswatini subject to gender-based violence in the form of rape before the age of 18. Almost 48% of women report some sexual violence being inflicted upon them, and 5% of girls being married before the age of 18. Sure. And then since the sort of act, a total of 2,068 cases have been reported between August 2018 and March 2019.
So I think that 1 in 3 girls, has somehow been subject to rape before the age of 18. I think that just gives me chills. Coming to your point, Slindele, this idea of talking, you know, when you say it, it seems like an obvious, let's talk.
Yeah.
But we understand very strongly, I mean clearly, that that's not easy.
It's not.
What makes it difficult for us to have these conversations? And I mean, I just also put myself in this parent zone and think, like, how open and honest have I been with and I've got teenagers.
Yeah.
And I'm still sort of wanting to talk to them in a way that we almost fear giving them too much information because we may feel we're encouraging the behavior. What makes it difficult for us to have those honest and open conversations with our children?
To be honest, it's very difficult. I'm a parent now. I used to talk about it. Let's talk, because I wasn't a parent. But now I'm a parent. We're afraid of facing the truth. We're afraid of answering the hard questions. We don't know every answer to every question. We're not sure if we'll be able to answer or cater for every question that they may come up with. But believe you me, if you don't gain that strength or courage to sit your children down and have that culture of communication and giving them information, they'll get it somewhere. They'll get it somewhere.
I think, just to add on to what you're saying, Eswatini is known for its culture. And the culture of Aswazi culture, we don't talk about these things. It's a taboo. You don't entertain. That is why most of this, especially girl-child rape and sexual violations, happen within the home. It's the uncle, it's the grandfather, it's the stepfather, and mom can't say anything about it because it's uncultural to talk such things. It's uncultural to go and report your husband, for instance, to Swaga. How it's just unswazi. So our culture has a lot of work to revolutionalize in terms of talking about such sexuality issues.
Sure.
If I can add on to that too, I mean, the statistics we've heard are just what's been reported.
Sure.
And there's a lot of stigma for people to come forward, and particularly in families. I mean, coming forward and reporting somebody in your own family is incredibly hard. There's a whole cultural background against you there to say, you know, don't talk about it, this is our family. I think working with youth, I mean, with my organization, with Asina Gagelane, I work with young people. And 16, 17-year-olds, they're having these conversations now. And I wasn't having those when I was young. So the youth is empowered, I think. As a mother, I am trying to empower my daughter, who's only 3, but I've been able to teach her, this is my body. So something as simple as teaching a 3-year-old, you don't have to hug everybody if you don't want to. You can teach a 3-year-old.
Of talking of things and educating our children in that storytelling space. What really is happening on the ground? Why don't we do this anymore? And why is it, like we say, what we call tibitendlu? We want to hide everything under the table. We don't talk about it anymore.
I just want to twist it a little bit.
Yes, please do.
And look at COVID. COVID has come and COVID has taken us back in the house, back in our homes.
Yes.
Something that had started to become foreign. Pre-COVID, we were never at home. We were never at home with our children. So many people are now single parents. We are career driven. We're becoming empowered as women. We don't have enough time to spend with our children. Industry, poverty, so many instances have led us to be out of home and leave our children under the care of people we don't even know. A gardener, for instance. Many children have been abused by the gardeners outside. Our children, the nannies, and that's a very, very significant one because they don't know. Many boys have been molested under the guise that I'm cleaning you up, and pleasure is stimulated one way or the other, and that the mind gets confused. That I thought you were washing me up and yet you are getting more excited. So it doesn't look like it's a wrong thing. After all, you were cleaning me, so I'm giving you pleasure, so it means it's okay. And mom, dad come home, they're tired, probably you're in your PJs, there's no time for discussing such deep things, and it's the next day. The child, like Slindele said, end up getting information from the wrong places. So industrialization has brought in a huge negative effect on family and also Ubuntu.
I'd like us to talk about this Ubuntu because I know it's a word we use often. We need to maybe also define it in this space. I like you mentioned it, Ndo, and I'd like us to just share a little bit. What do we understand by Ubuntu and how does it fit into the context of just this very topic we're discussing today? Slindele, go, and I'll come to.
Ubuntu it fits very well with this, with the fact that it's not Ndo's problem, it's not Sweet's problem, it's not Swaga's problem. It's everyone's problem. It's your problem. You hear your neighbor screaming. Don't shut the door and say, "Hey, I don't want to get into it." Ask, do something about it. That's Ubuntu. Not feel sorry. Yes, empathy and listen without judging. Ubuntu. Don't take it out and then go laugh about it elsewhere. That's Ubuntu. Sit down and try to get help. The problem is we want to help a person up to the end. You can never. As an institution, we don't. Previously, we didn't. When I was at Swaga, we had partners that we worked with. So you as yourself, if you feel like I can't get into it because I can't go on further, it's fine. By virtue of just listening without judging, that's done. Spirit of Ubuntu. Linking the person to the next best
community
point.
But it is about community, isn't it? And I mean, with gender-based violence, everybody needs to be a gender advocate. So we've talked a lot about what women can do, but I think it's also really important to talk about the role that men need to play in standing up for gender-based violence and in saying things like call-out culture, like that's not cool, man, don't catcall, don't treat her like that. I think this movement is starting where there is much more involvement. But to really end gender-based violence, I mean, we're talking about such a pervasive problem. We really do need everybody. If I'm having conversations with my students in class, those conversations should be carried on by other members of the community. Hopefully, the conversations with my beautiful daughter about consent at age 3 will continue, you know, as she goes to preschool and moves through school. But we need people to be looking out and protecting the most vulnerable people of our community, which are often young women.
Absolutely.
So Selena, you're actually just touching on something, and Linda, if you just go down to Tanya's comment, she says, I'm sure this will be an interesting topic, but I keep seeing the same thing happen in a lot of topics about gender-based violence. The men are usually excluded from the panel. Hi, Tammy. Is there an expert reason behind this and why this happens that we may not be aware of? Men are missing from these topics and women cannot do it alone.
Actually, GBV is maybe domestic violence, as with men being the main perpetrators. We can't do anything about it. We are the victims. This is a men issue. Men should take the stand. Men should explain to us what makes them do the things that they do. Here we are sitting as a panel of professionals using intellectual knowledge or academic knowledge. We need men to rise up. Thanks to you, Tamsanga, to being part of the panel. But definitely this is a men issue.
Wow, like I've never actually looked at it from that perspective. I've never thought of it that way. that even women are the victims, but this is a man issue.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah. To Tanya's point, I think what you're challenging us to do, Tanya, is to really is to call the men to talk about this issue.
Absolutely.
So I would almost like to put it out there that perhaps we need to have a second phase to this discussion.
Absolutely.
And actually bring men onto the panel and discuss it, just like we have had our discussion here. And Tami, I'm sure you'll be happy to lead that panel. But thank you for actually sort of shedding that perspective and sharing it with us, Tanya, because I think that's a very important thing. You're absolutely right. We seem to be addressing this the same way and maybe not seeing the results we want. Maybe we need to think differently about how we are engaging and having these discussions. And who are we addressing in the discussions and asking for perspective and knowledge. So thank you for weighing in on that.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to just take us back a little bit and just to understand, why is it that the stats are showing women as the largest pool of victims when it comes to gender-based violence or even domestic violence? What is it? And this is not an Eswatini issue. It's stats that are global. Yep. And I think it's also to just share. This is not something that is only in traditional cultures. It's even in more developed cultures. It is, and it crosses all boundaries. Laterally, horizontally. We're just. What is it about women being victims of abuse that has this global? Is this what we call this almost global ill? Where does that come from? Yeah, pandemic.
It's actually a
absolutely
pandemic.
Right. Yeah, COVID is one, but so is GBV.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that give it that scale and that scope? Why?
I wouldn't say I have an answer to why so much against women, but I would have an analysis of why is it easy for them to come out and report. Naturally, we are talkers. We speak. If I have something here that's not fine with me in this table, by the corridor I'll be done. I would have talked about it. You know what Shirley did, you know what, already. And then naturally men don't speak, So if, as a woman, I'm going through something, even if I don't talk to it directly or about it directly, but somehow I let it out. So it becomes easier for us to then talk to the issue or talk about it and report, even if it's not in the form of report, but the fact that I'm talking. Whereas men are groomed to be silent. She mentioned it earlier, your masculinity doesn't allow you to allow the nation or the public to know of your pains or your sorrows or everything. You must be this big man, you're Mr. you're Mr. Africa, and look good. So you can't let out and show the public that you're dying inside. So naturally, and we discourage it completely, because then it comes out as a bomb at the end of the day. You hold it in, and by the time you let it out, you just disturb the whole globe.
Like this is actually interesting, because in some circles, this is part of the conversation that's being had, that we need to redefine what masculinity is. And the fact that we're just from our basic makeup, we're emotional beings. So if you're not able to express your emotions, that means there's a part of you that's being blocked, that's being locked away. So, yeah.
Tammy, from what you're saying now, I thought just came through that, well, for married couples, sex is supposed to be a pleasurable thing. Yeah. And then why do men see this thing as a punishment? How could you feel pleasure by suppressing somebody, letting somebody cry, scream, and you derive pleasure from that? Where did that craziness come from? I think we could have used beating or something else, but sex, something pleasurable, something beautiful, to destroy my life? Why? I would love to evoke some from our viewers. Why choose that if there's so many other ways to punish us? I'd love to know that part.
I mean, rape is also used as a tactic of war. I mean, we recently, on June 19th, we had the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence and Conflict. And often soldiers will use rape as an opportunity to decimate communities, because it's humiliating. It destroys families, it tears people apart. And so often when rape is used as a punishment, it's an act of aggression, it's an act of anger, of domination. And I think that the reason that it happens a lot is because we talk a lot about the patriarchy and how women are victims of the patriarchy, but men are victims of the patriarchy too. Because they're being told their whole lives they have to be, like you say, this tough guy, they have to act in a particular way, and they can't express themselves, they're filled with rage. I'm not excusing any act of gender-based violence by saying that, but I think it's definitely a contributing factor. One of the best things that we did at Waterford with Asina Gagelane is we had a men's week. And we had all of our male young students come up and talk about what healthy masculinity meant to them, what it meant to support the women in their lives, what it meant to be a good brother or, you know, a good friend, and actually have men having conversations with other men. Because as you said, men don't often talk. Men's mental health is a huge problem. There's a lot of silence from that particular gender. And I think if we do want to end gender-based violence, that needs to be something that men take on. They are honest with each other and that they're honest with themselves.
I love that idea of being honest with each other and honest with themselves. So Yael Uzantida, who's actually online with us this evening, she shared a very interesting sort of study that was done around psychology and with rearing young boys to be men. And obviously I'm going to paraphrase this, but basically what was so interesting about what she shared is there's a shift in the way in which we should be raising young boys. We often tell them, don't cry. You know, at the first sign of any sort of emotional, which is related to tears or anything, no, keep it in, don't cry. You know, men don't cry, men are strong, men. So what we're doing is we're actually telling people, or boys who are later to be men, don't be vulnerable. Don't show any form of weakness. Be hard, be strong, be domineering. And so we don't actually realize what we are perpetuating in the mind, because remember, the belief is what drives the behavior. So there's a belief that I am strong, I must take control, I must be the provider, I must do, and if I don't get my way. And what happens is because we are not aligned with our feelings, it then turns to anger, abuse, violence.
Absolutely.
I don't know what's going on in me, I need to take it out, I need to do something with it. And so if we rewind the tape and we say, okay, how are we socializing and rearing our young boys?
Absolutely.
Because you're right, it's both sides of the scale that we're talking to. Could that potentially actually end up being different? Could we read different stories, different statistics? So I thought that was quite, I even went home and sort of shared it with, is why do we do that? Why do we say, guys, be strong and, you know, don't show any emotion, don't cry, don't, you know, and I think it's something we probably have just copy paste. We saw it being done, we've heard it being done, and so we do it.
But it's also so reinforced by the media. I mean, look at what the media puts out about how men should act, right? Look at the television programs, listen to the music, right? Where you're listening to, can I swear?
This is open and honest conversation.
Where you're listening about men talk about women as like bitches and whores. I mean, they hear that, that's glorified, it's glamorized, and then we're expecting them to behave differently than the messages that they're constantly getting.
Yeah, and this is the question, and I'd like to ask Ndo and Ndile to weigh in. There is that side of it, but I think there's the flip side of the story, Selena, maybe, in that we are accepting it. Because I think if we were like, hell to the no, don't refer to me with any B word unless it's beautiful.
Exactly.
Okay, or badass maybe, you know what I mean? We also receive that, and you know, so we're fighting against something that we're also feeding. We're feeding this monster. Why do we do that? Why is it so difficult for us to actually also take a stand as women against these type of things?
You know, back to enculturation, and then getting a bit into psychology. We are wired to be more on the, we are perceived to be wired on, to be on the submissive level, biblically even, you know, one of those special verses that every wedding must have. Woman, submit to your husband, men, love your wife. And already that enculturation, whether it's religion or culture, already dictates what type of life it's going to, And now with all this revolution, all these great things that have come up, women empowerment especially, now men are finding themselves under the women and they feel emasculated. They don't feel like men anymore because the woman is now taking my role and I now have to become the mom, swapping roles. So it is, most of the time it is frustration because they don't feel they're men enough. And the only way to be men enough to raise a voice, to put a fist, to sexually abuse, then you feel strong enough. Because there you have physical power. And yet maybe the lady, your wife, your spouse has financial power. which is something that is not known, which is now slowly coming up. And when I look at behavior change programs, with COVID, it didn't take us hardly a month. Everyone globally is wearing a face mask. We were told, wear a mask, and that's it.
Sure.
Look at HIV. We are still battling with HIV.
Yeah.
Behavior change programs are not put in place. Use a condom, still people do not use condoms. So I feel we can come together, be as aggressive as this COVID that took us by storm, and be aligned.
You know, in the way we are presenting the communication.
Yeah.
So this is just reaching out to behavior change agencies to say that when you put together the campaigns, take that into consideration. They really need to take that into consideration.
In our social media, for instance, we have a Pastor Bake, who has been hammered, ridiculed, stigmatized for washing dishes, posting himself as a pastor for washing dishes, for carrying the babies. And you know, people even go to the point of, probably your wife bewitched you. What kind of man are you? There's so much attack. So we need more of those men, more of those men. And recently, I think we saw our Deputy Prime Minister doing the same, what you're saying. Because he was the DPM, and it looked like, oh, okay, then it means. So definitely we need more empowered men, more men with influence to take this on, to make it easier for our children to have proper role models.
I love that idea, actually. Just flip it on its head. Like, really, let's do that. Let's ruffle the feathers for a change. But I want to come back to this idea. What we said is we have this sort of role, you know, where there's a certain dominance that we experienced. And, you know, I think you mentioned, Selena, about women being disenfranchised in many different ways. And I'd like us to evolve a little bit. How is it that men have been disenfranchised? But I think there's also a real call, Ndo, based on what you're saying, is that we really need to understand what it is that we're saying. And what's said in the Bible is not how we interpret it. I think we do that to suit our own realities, because we want to have dominance. There have to be people that are dominant, so there has to be a follower and there has to be a leader. And so we play these roles to kind of rationalize what it is we're doing. Oh no, it says it in the Bible. I think that's the place we need to check. Have we interpreted it correctly? Because I think what we could be risking is really actually misinterpreting and doing harm. To what it is that we're saying. So I'd like us to be challenged there, and I think there's a real responsibility for leaders who are preaching to really check it. Because you're right, you hear it at every wedding. I think I even rolled my eyes when that thing came, because I was like, I know exactly what we're thinking. And I sort of turned to my husband and said, don't even think about it. Okay, submission is not grovel. It is not I am weaker. It is we are co-hosts, but there obviously needs to be a dynamic that allows us to lead and follow. And that dynamic can change. Okay, but why is it that because we have somehow set men up to link identity to power and control, that now when that gets rattled, men are feeling emasculated? Where does that come from? And maybe just share with us a little bit how it is that maybe traditionally things have been, and why now, as we rattle the box and ruffle the feathers, things seem to be falling apart.
I think Tommy can answer that, because I don't know what happens to them. But what I'm viewing and seeing is there's a competition now. I actually wanted to flip it around. How best can we end this competition between genders? You know, we joke about it on social media. This gender has done this gender, and we laugh, ha ha ha. But we need to live harmoniously at the end of the day. It's created by all these things that are happening. What you're talking about, the answer that you want from us right now, which I can't answer, but what is it that we need to do? How can we live in harmony now, moving forward? Let us fight this. Let us not fight each other. We are shooting the gun in the wrong place, but let us shoot it and point it at GBV, not at each other. So let's I don't know, we're just fighting.
No, Slindele is actually very right, because I think I've picked up on that trend as well, and we might have spoken about it a while ago, that it's now an issue of us versus them versus us versus the issue. You know what I mean? And there's nothing that's being won at the end of the day. you know, because we just end up just being at each other's throats, and then men walk away and saying, "Nyababona," and women walk away saying, "Ah, vele, they're like that," you know what I mean? And then there's no progress in that kind of approach. But going back to what you said earlier on, Shirley, we behave according to our beliefs. So it's the beliefs that need to be checked. It's the beliefs that really, really need to be put under the microscope and checked. Some of these beliefs might have helped us at a certain point in time in our evolution as a people, as a nation, but the question is, are they serving us right now? And when you look at the way things are happening, I doubt that very much. So that's why we actually need to go back and interrogate our beliefs, and then actually start putting into place systems and mechanics that will help us to start changing beliefs without losing our identity and all of that.
I think that's the reason why we were with the SOTV advocacy. We had to touch base with the chiefs, you know, your cultural people, to understand what then did you use before. Are we in line? Is this content of the bill still in line with the Swazi culture? Because we don't want to disturb it. We believe so much that the Swazi culture is beautiful, but it's been disturbed, it's been misinterpreted, it's been misunderstood. As you were saying, people interpret the Bible according to what suits them. And that's the same what's been done with Swazi culture. They've interpreted it to what suits them at that time. And I personally believe Swazi culture is a very beautiful thing. And mind you, the Act protects Swazi culture. So that's how we want it, convincing them enough that we are actually strengthening what is already there. Thank God for this. We are actually protecting what is already there. So let us push. I'm trying to go back to Tammy's point and say it's the culture and the beliefs that are making these things.
Add on, our NGO Transitions Tengonve Swatini, we once had toll-free suicide line, and the trend was the whole day it would be ladies calling, and you know, and then almost after midnight, all the calls would be from men, and men are seriously reaching out. Men are now becoming emotionally intelligent, but they just the structures are just not in place. So whosoever is trying to bring up programs, and I think part of this purpose, men do want help. Men do need assistance. It's just still embarrassing. We have a number of men that have gone to report, but were being mocked. To a point of calling the other officer, what did you say? My wife beat me up. Really now? Can you come back again with that? So even with our justice system, they need to carry, like I said, this is more of a men issue. They need to consider the men too, and not make it look like we're attacking the men, They will obviously be defensive. So we need to work with them.
So I'd like to just come onto your point, Slindele, because obviously being involved in the sort of Act was, you know, a milestone, and we had been, you know, it was years in the making before it finally got, and I think there was almost a sigh of relief. You're saying it is to protect culture, and I think that's a very interesting point you make, but obviously within some of those cultural practices, there were certain behaviors that were no longer serving us. And I think the idea of when you're courting someone, now we call it, you know, you can follow them, you can call them, sort of, and that could be considered harassment. So under the usual cultural norm, it was considered normal. I'm pursuing my love interest. But how it was playing out was that all of a sudden you're being stalked, someone is harassing you, you're not feeling safe to leave your home. Wherever you go, this person is there and insisting to have your attention. So that must have obviously been a very sensitive line to draw. And obviously the question needs to be asked, is this behavior serving us as we move forward?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. And that's what the sort of bill was able to say, is let's take out from it what you can pursue your love interest, but not in a way that touches on their dignity and their own rights, their own human rights.
We had to explain it like thoroughly, that what your forefathers did and how they courted your grandparents or your grandmothers is different from how your boyfriends are courting you now. Your forefathers had respect, which we're lacking now for each other. They understood, which we're lacking now. They had time, they were patient, which we're lacking now. So my grandfather would go after my mother, grandmother with respect and understanding and patience and get away, and he would. But right now, if no one gets you, I mean, if I don't get you, no one will. That's it. We're no longer patient. Our guys are no longer respectful. Our guys are no longer don't understand, like, I don't want you, and that's it. So it has become a stalking. We had to come to a point where we actually say, what is so close, by the way? Oh my God, I'm exposing myself. Illegal stalking?
Yes.
Unlawful stalking. Unlawful stalking. Yet stalking in general is unlawful.
Yeah.
So you can't say illegal, illegal.
Yeah. So there's stalking and then there's unlawful stalking. No,
it doesn't make sense.
Is
Stalking
it's
is just wrong.
Yeah, it's
you know.
wrong.
So when we said unlawful stalking, we were trying to protect the act of courting. You can go after Ndo for 4 months, as long as Ndo is happy for you to go after her. She's enjoying your chocolates, your KFC, your calls, your SMSs, your free airtime. It's nice. But as long as Ndo says, now please stop, Tammy, I'm no longer comfortable with you calling me at midnight, Tammy should stop. And if Tammy continues after Ndo has said that, then it's stalking. It counts as stalking. When you go to the police station, I'll continue with you. When Ndo goes to the police station to report Tammy, he's been after me for the past 4 months, but now I've told him to stop, but he's continued. You're not getting Tammy arrested. All you're saying to the police station, if I disappear or vanish, Tammy is the first suspect.
Sure, that's a very thin line though, hey, Slindele. Often I wonder if it's late, and I think we're going to also delve into what could potentially be the experiences that some of our victims are having in our police system. You know, are we more helpful, or is there, you know, some real hurt that's happening there? But I'd like to go to the screen, if we may, and just share some of the comments coming through. So Tanya again has a very good point. She's saying, I've noted that there are different types of GBV. We seem to be talking about one that occurs in intimate relationships, and hence the discussion around the swapping of roles and feeling emasculated, excuse me. What about instances where women are attacked by strangers, for example at the taxi rank, where women are being raped while going to buy bread, or what would be your expert opinion on this? So if we take it out of kind of this intimate context, what about being just accosted, harassed, in worst cases raped, attacked in public spaces, when you're walking home?
You know,
where does that fall?
Going back again to, I think it's culture or the way we do things.
Yep.
Somebody would be sexually harassed, maybe, and the taxi rank. The first thing is, what were you wearing?
Yeah.
What were you showing? What were you exposing? What did you do to trigger the man to want to do this to you? Were you drunk? Were you out at night? And then it always comes back as if I was wrong. Therefore, I deserved whatever was done unto me. And yet we have a right to wear anything we want to wear. We have a right to go partying if we want to go party. It doesn't give anyone any power that now that she's drunk, I can take advantage of her. And I know, thanks to Tanya, that we are trying to get away from just the relationships. But also the mentality where we grew up from is that ngamlobola, a property. And these kids are growing up knowing that a woman is your property because you've paid cows for her. And therefore she must do anything and everything, she's your object. Hence then they find themselves doing all of these barbaric behaviors anywhere and anyhow.
Yeah. So lobola is one practice, you're absolutely right, where we sort of buy our bride. Are there other practices also that are happening that are not lobola related, Selena, that also tend to sort of distinguish women as this possession, and therefore could potentially then bring on the way in which women are treated? What are some of those practices?
I mean, there's so many things to do with objectification of women's bodies, right? And like Ndo was talking about with the sexualization of bodies, about what you're wearing, with victim blaming. This is a really, really damaging cultural practice where you're saying that it's the woman's fault if she gets raped. Whereas we're not putting the responsibility where it lies, right? Objectification also means that women's bodies are not treated with the same respect as male bodies. So there's a theory about how the way that women's bodies are conceived is that they're vulnerable and they can be smashed into. There's a quality about them where their lives aren't as grievable. We wouldn't mourn their lives as much as we would mourn the lives of men. There's cultural norms, and I mean, I'm from Canada, so I'm speaking from quite a North American context here, but the idea that women are inferior and that men are the dominant ones, this is the most damaging thing. In order to end GBV, you need to eradicate gender norms.
Absolutely.
You need to work on empowering women
Absolutely.
to give them more power, particularly when violence isn't just physical. There's structural violence, which is to do with economics. If a woman is being abused, she doesn't have the economic capacity to escape an abusive relationship. She doesn't trust the police. She can't come forward. There's many barriers that women face that men just don't. And so it's all, you know, changing gender norms, but also we have to change society and some structures. We have to make it so that women do feel empowered to come forward, and that if she gets raped at a bus stop, if someone sees, they're going to stop it. We need to empower bystanders too.
Yeah.
We need to get the whole community to consider this. It's not a men's issue, it's not a women's issue, it's an everybody issue.
No, I like that. And I think the one thing that we could learn also from what's happening around the world, and I just want to segue but very briefly into sort of the George Floyd issue, is how people standing around are also liable for the crime being committed. And I think that's a very big stand that is being set, because very often we are quiet. And so now what laws like that do is they say, if you know and you chose to do nothing, you're guilty. And I think empowering is also allowing us to firstly be aware that, I actually have a role to play in this. Doesn't matter what's happening. I'm partly either causing the issue because I'm being quiet and turning a blind eye, or I need to respond, react, report, do something so that there's a response. Let's talk about some of these responses. So obviously you lovely ladies are involved in your own realms in you know, creating response mechanism, empowering people, sharing information, abuse. So what happens in those spaces, and what are we seeing? What are some of the cases that we've witnessed and seen that are not necessarily physical, but there is abuse? And what are sort of maybe what are the response mechanisms?
So at Waterford, what we do is we have a lot of really uncomfortable conversations, right? Many. And we talk a lot about beliefs, but we also talk a lot about habits. And sometimes you can have a habit and you don't even realize that you have it. So something like microaggressions towards women, which are just small things that people say, they don't even realize that they're saying.
Give us some examples, Selena.
So if you would say, oh, you girls are just gossiping, versus like you couldn't be talking about something important, right? Just diminishing women in a small way, or asking somebody like, where are you really from, right? Because you can't possibly be from the place you say you are, is an example of like a racial microaggression. So we talk about these things a lot, and we try to understand by asking questions, right? Why is it that you think that, right? I found as somebody, I mean, I've had much horrible jokes and catcalls and things directed at me as a woman, as I'm sure many women have. One of the best strategies that I've had is if someone said a sexist joke to me, I've said, I don't understand that joke. Can you explain it to me? And then watching them try to explain why it might possibly be funny realizes that they realize, actually, this is a horrible thing that I've just said to you. One of my bosses, when I was working in waitressing, told me I should be a sex phone operator, and then he started laughing. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Why is it funny? And he just, you know, completely backtracked. So I think, like you say, talking at people doesn't necessarily work. Asking people questions, listening to what they're saying, trying to understand it, and then trying to sort of guide them to discover it by themselves, I think is really a good strategy.
Okay, that's a nice one. Can we turn to the screen? We've got Julie Thring who's sending a message to us. A big issue, and one that needs to be addressed, is the problem we have in Eswatini of not going to the authorities, but rather saying that we should keep the problem at home and go to the elders or older family members to talk about it and solve the problem. I think of a case where a father threatened his child and gave her a disturbing visual of what he was going to do to her if she reported to the police, and the extended family said they should rather have a home discussion. The perpetrator has not changed because all he gets is a slap on the wrist. The elders are not equipped to deal with these issues. Is it about an issue of not being equipped, or is it a choice that's being made? Or wanting to shove it under the mat, as we say?
Most people view abuse as an embarrassment, especially sexual abuse, rape.
Is that true, Slindele? Can we say really that we understand that this is an embarrassment or something that is negative in our space?
It's heavy. It's heavy because either way of how I respond to it, it's a personal thing to the family. I can't say it's not embarrassment, but it depends on how it came about. If my brother slept with my child or raped my child, I love my brother, but I love my child. I don't want any of them to be exposed, but I need my child to be helped, God forbid. Yeah? I don't want my brother to go to jail. So we are this elite family. If it comes out, then, oh, look at them. They act united and strong. They seem to have it all together, but now look. So there are so many issues that make people sweep things under the carpet. Yes, some it's ignorance, some people don't know. Then some people look at the public, what will they say? So let's shut it down, you'll get over it.
Sure. So it's almost self-preservation, hey? We have this image, we represent something in society, and so we can't expose these things. So what does that say? Can we say that there are possibly many cases where women are being raped by high-profile people and we don't even know about it?
Yes.
And
Reports is something else, but unreported cases are so many. There's a lot of them that are not being reported.
Taking me back to one case I had where this lady expressed her disappointment with her own body. That, you know, this person was raping me. It was first painful, but I started enjoying it, and it was rape. So how can I report something that I enjoyed? Because your body, your genitals lubricated, and it made it easier. I'm sure he was, well, probably doing it right, but it was rape. So she found herself, her body responding. And
sexual beings.
yes, exactly.
And then it goes back to the point of getting counseling, the importance of seeking counseling and getting psychological help. Because at the end of the day, you end up blaming yourself. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have walked at night. Maybe I shouldn't have worn that short skirt. Maybe I shouldn't have sat next to him, you know, and attracted myself and, you know, to him. So when you get counseling, you get to a point where you say, no, it's not supposed to have happened.
Exactly.
You know, and then you forgive yourself. Because most survivors or victims, they blame themselves and forgive the perpetrator.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it turns out to be the other way around. I say sorry to the guy for walking at night.
I think we have to empower survivors to be able to tell their story. When I came out at Waterford as a survivor of gender-based violence, many students told me how powerful it was because it meant that they had a role model who's someone who's been through it and isn't ashamed. Something horrible happened to me. It wasn't my fault. I've now gone to counseling and I'm healing from it, but it's a process. And I think that students in my context, but I think young people in a broader context need to have role models who have been victims, who can talk about it without stigma, without shame, to normalize it, right? Not to normalize the behavior, but to normalize the conversation.
And I've literally, I hope you still have time, I've literally learned while I was at Swaga, the science of abuse and reporting and talking about it. We had someone in Swaziland who wanted to share because she was tired of 1 in 3, the figures. She wanted to put a face on it.
yes.
She's well known, and she said, Slee, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about an issue that I went through as a child. Grown as I am, but I want to end the numbers and put a face and tell people that it can happen to you as well. But you can, if you get counseling, these are the rewards. And obviously we had to then go through a whole process where we informed the family. Old as she was, she hadn't told the family, but then she wanted to take a bigger step where she came out publicly, out in the world, media and everything. But we said, no, let's take it step by step. Let's inform the family first. And what I noticed from that whole process is, yeah, we went through the whole thing. She informed the family, they were devastated, disappointed, everything, all emotions, and we went for counseling, we provided counseling for them. But what happened in the long run, after she came out, 3 more people in the family.
Shared their experiences.
Within the family.
Yeah.
They gained confidence. If she can do it, then let me do it, you know.
It's very critical.
Yeah.
Going back again to HIV era, the first lady, Gugu, who declared openly that she's HIV positive, was stoned to death. But after that sacrifice, it's now normal for people to say, I'm HIV positive. Yeah. So let us not be scared to come out. Normalize is probably not the right word, but I also can't find another one.
Yeah.
But let it be something that we can talk about, that destigmatize it. Exactly.
The most important is let us create safe spaces for all of us.
Yes.
Let us not encourage people to come out when we know the world is dangerous and it won't welcome them. I'm happy with social media. We've created this space where we say, move on, you'll be fine. You know, we are this sisterly love where I'm not afraid to say, I'm going through this, I've gone through this. And we look beyond what you went through and we push you further and empower you.
Absolutely.
You know? So we need to encourage and promote such spaces, which I love. And thank you for this connection.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, there's so much we can talk about because obviously we want to understand what are victims also experiencing when they go to report, and maybe that could be part of what is making it not easy. Reporting is something also that is quite personal, but I think telling the story is also a step. Is to say, this is what I went through and this is what it's done. And I think shining a light means that there is no longer darkness. Whenever there's darkness, we can hide and we can pretend like it's not there because we don't see it. The more we shine light on it, no matter where it's coming from, no matter what form it is, the more we get to destigmatize it, and then we can have real dialogue and discussion around it. And I love what's coming up on the screen there. I think it was Setu saying, we need to also have these conversations as men. We need to feel comfortable to come to the table and really just lay it all down and talk about it, right? So let's turn our eyes just to the screen again. We are coming sort of towards the end of the session, but we still haven't, we've just touched on the tipping point of it. I mean, we need to come back and have this conversation and talk more about it. But we are talking to, so Libby just says vital conversation. Panilla, please also consider socioeconomic inequalities, as these do disempower women who are therefore dependent on men and cannot leave them, even if they are sexually violent towards them. And I think, you know, we haven't spoken about what some of the cases are that have come out of COVID, but I'm hoping very briefly we can also understand how COVID has influenced or impacted this.
In court, they now get a murder sentence, which will be fine than rape.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
Wow. Yeah,
disgusting.
So the whole act was done in the mindset of a perpetrator. A perpetrator knew before the SOTV Act that if I don't penetrate, then I won't be charged for rape.
Exactly.
It will just be indecent assault. You know, indecently.
I just touched a little bit.
I just touched it here and there, but I didn't penetrate. So now the Act says, if you just play around, it's rape.
I think if you show it, that's rape. How are the police, health and welfare services geared to deal with GBV? What are we saying, ladies? Just to sort of, unfortunately, we've come to the end of this one, but I think we need to do this again. I feel like there's so much we haven't spoken to. How do we feel in Eswatini? Let's just maybe look at our local perspective. Are we geared to face GBV, or is it still something that sort of doesn't have the focus and attention that is required?
I mean, things like the one-stop center in the hospitals where you have legal counsel also. So you have resources there that women can actually access. I think it's a process, right? I mean, I don't think we've arrived, but it's definitely, there's been lots of movement done since SOTV has been passed. I think it's a huge landmark for the country.
I've also had the opportunity through the NGO Ndo Mdlalose to partner with the police department, and on a regular basis, we, as psychologists, we get to train the domestic and violence child protection unit. So there is that kind of establishment of relationships now. Like you're saying, there's something small is happening. We're getting there. And I think the more we engage more and more, remember guys, police are not psychologists. Police are not the magistrate. They were trained for criminals. They were trained for certain things. So we can't be too harsh on them, but our system's in place. That is where now I need the DPM's office, the social welfare department, to be more active than just blaming it on the police.
Yeah, we need to work together and move away from I know Shirley, I know Ndo, so when I pick up the phone, if I don't find either of these two, then nothing will happen. Unfortunately, this is what is happening right now, you know. It needs to be an institutional thing. Whoever I find understands, and they understand that they need to do it. We are partners, we have different strengths in different fields, you know, but let us deal with this as declare it as a national disaster.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You
Spot on.
heard it, okay? Declare as a national disaster. Ladies, I'm so sorry, ladies and gents who are on the screen, we are coming sort of to the end of this discussion, but we want to keep your comments and refer to them. But I think just as a closing, and I would like to say call to action. What is it that we want to see? And I think we need to be directive, because it's like you were saying, Ndo, they said wear masks, we wore masks. Why are we so reluctant and still trying to be PR about this thing of GBV? Can we say no more? It's time to change. No more. Can we be that bold? And I would ask that we really are bold. And I'd also like to the camera, call on everybody. It's my problem. It's not just Ndo's problem. It's not Slindele's problem. It's not Selena's problem. It is mine and your problem, each and every one of us, to play a part here. We need to be bold. We call on the brave, right? The rebels, but the agents of change. People are willing to do this. I'd like you, please, to encourage us as civil society, anyone who's listening and who will listen even when it's not live. What is it that each and every one of us can do, starting today, when we talk GBV? Very practically. May I start with you, Slindele?
Yeah. Play your part, little as it is. Listen without judging.
Love
That's it.
that.
Don't be afraid to have conversations. Don't think that because it's distasteful doesn't mean that you don't have to talk about it. It is everybody's responsibility.
Absolutely. Mine is love yourself. Love yourself, love your body, respect yourself, have values, have morals, and respect the next person. Could be your mom, could be your sister, could be your cousin, it could be anyone else. So if it's not about you, learn to love the next person.
Thank you very much, ladies, for what you've brought to the discussion today. With this, we are not done with it. I feel like this is going to be a long discussion, and we're going to get more and more open and honest about it. But I thank you for being with us for this part of the discussion, and it shall continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My message is this: believe when the story is being told. Believe the story. Too often we don't believe. We try to ask, oh, really? Are you sure? Did they really touch you there? Was that really what happened? And I think often it's because it's disturbing us that the story is making us feel uncomfortable, that we're trying to hop and skip around it. If it's your child, if it's your friend, if it's anybody who says to you, this is what has happened, believe the story and take it from there. Anything you want to say, Tammy, before we close off this particular topic?
This is just giving me so much to think about, and so like we just need to act. We just need to act. So much has been said, we just need to act. I saw Ray, D, and Manoba, Mabuza were actually just saying, you know what, we also need men to take part in these conversations, and I think that's exactly where we need to go to next, and then just have a discussion with men in terms of what do we need to do, what must we do from here going forward, because like I said, so much has been said. We just now need to act. We just now need to start doing. And we appreciate you guys very much for joining us this evening. Selu, Dlamini, Rally D. I see that you guys are actually already having a discussion amongst yourselves in the comment section,
amazing.
and that's beautiful. We encourage that, because that's what this platform is for. It's not just about us here in the studio, but it's about you guys over there as well. So thank you very much for taking that initiative and getting that conversation going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we are going to stay with you a few more minutes. We have obviously some mentions. We always, as you know, like to share what people are doing on the ground and how we can support local businesses. And obviously today is no exception, or this evening is no exception. So you might have noticed that in the background we've got some beautiful artwork. Ladies, I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look. They are not there by accident. Tammy, will you share who is the brilliance and talent behind what we see?
Absolutely. So the artwork that's sitting behind us is by a fine artist by the name Honest Lihle Mhlanga. A brother that we've all watched grow in this industry. He has basically broken barriers and set a new standard for what it means to be a fine artist in the Kingdom of Eswatini and beyond. His notable career moments include Eswatini's record holder for highest and most auctioned painter, of course, first and only painter to grace the MTN Bushfire main stage. He's been doing so many amazing things. Part of his solo exhibitions include Expressions, which was in 2015, Embrace 2016, and Back to the Future at Alliance Francaise, which was in 2020. Some notable live features include on-stage painting featured by musicians, which was 2 nights with Sipho Hostix Mabuse, Kale Makene, few shows between 2017 and 2019, and a member of the Lonsington Dramatics Guild. Additional skills, he is a freelance teacher and a curator, and you can catch him on +268 765 46913 or honest.mhlanga87@gmail.com.
Okay.
We appreciate you very much, brother.
bring
So
that
the
business,
interesting
yes.
thing, he's actually in the building as we speak,
Oh,
guarding
there.
his paintings. He doesn't trust us. Guarding his paintings. But yeah, we appreciate you very much, and we wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you, and we'll obviously share those details with you. There's a very special, I think there's a collection of sketches that you're doing, Honest. Just turn your attention to the one in the corner, very, very interesting, and I think that on its own can spark huge discussion. So watch the space. Yes, and obviously we have invited you here. We are not sending you home empty-stomached, okay? We like to schmooze our guests, and we do that with beautiful eats and treats from people who are doing fantastic things on the ground. And we are so humbled by the wonderful reception we've had, and when we call and we say, hey guys, we've got the show, they're like, oh yes, we'd love to provide you with snacks and eats. So today we have 2 that are featured, and we'll be able to enjoy the eats after this. Cakes by Amreen. So Amreen Master is a 23-year-old girl who decided to start baking as a profession from nowhere. Okay, she's a self-taught baker, and she learned most of her things from practicing every day. Practice, practice, practice. And also the willingness to learn. So she picked up this business, or started this business about 6 months ago, and the way it's grown is actually through referral. So hopefully after tonight, if you love what you're eating, you'll refer her, and so it happens. So she said she'd just like to say thank you to Russians. So we just want to say thank you. Have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Stay safe, keep wearing the mask. We have a treat this evening, so to close off, we are going to hand over to the courtesy of hip hop, who is going to close off this topic for us this evening with a spoken word.
No matter the words she uses to describe the violation, no matter the drinks or the outfit or the degree to which she knew or didn't know her violator, no matter the time of day or night or the spaces in memory, no matter her age now or her age then, or how many years it took for her to speak, no matter how many times it's happened or what came before or after, believe her. No matter the questions that rise in your mind, planted by a culture that has taught you that it is her story that has to be met with disbelief, believe her. Hear her story. Blanket her shame with your love. Counter her fear with your faith. Hold the relentless questions running in loops in her mind between your palms tenderly. When she says, it was my fault, tell her no. When she asks, was this okay? Say, not now, not ever. When she wonders, did I bring this to myself? Remind her that she has only ever called in goodness. When she tells you, they didn't believe me before, believe her. When she cries, let her. When she reaches out in need of arms, hold her. When she needs to tell her story again and again and again, listen as many times as it takes. When it takes longer than you expected for her to heal, be infinitely patient. When that healing looks nothing like they told you it would, find every dictionary in your house, cross out the definition they gave you, allow her to write in her own words. Be sure to use pencil so she can change it as often as she needs to. When her body feels unsafe on the street or in the coffee shop or at the grocery store, or walk closely beside her, ask if she would like for you to hold her hand. Shield her energy with your own. Don't let go. When she's afraid of the dark, keep the lights on. When you're not sure how to proceed, ask her. When she answers, pay close attention. When the roles change, accept them. When a woman tells you she was violated, believe her. And don't just only believe her, say so. Don't just think it. Don't just feel it. Speak the words to her out loud right now, as many times as it takes, over and over and over again, in words, in writing, with your body, with the way you look at her, in public, on social media, at the hospital, at the police station, in court, at the bar, on the street corner, in your outside voice where other people can hear, in as many different languages as you can memorize. Because too many women in this world have been violated, and too many